So I can kind of zoom in here. You can kind of see that this row here compared to this row, they're not perfectly even, but that's fine. They're gonna just be a bit more out of the way than they normally would be, and we'll get the rest of these cleaned up here. By the way, when you're doing soldering, I mentioned using the isopropyl alcohol to help clean the boards. You can clean, and you should actually rinse the board with water after you clean it up. You can do that. Just be sure, of course, that the board is dry. So use some compressed air, for example, to remove any excess water before you apply any power to it, of course. But you definitely can use water on an electrical board. And that's actually why you hear people say, oh, my phone got wet or device got wet, and put it in the oven or put it in a bag of rice or something like that. Because what you're trying to do is get rid of the water. So water is not really the enemy. It's the enemy when you have power attached to it. So, all right, got that. So let's go through and let's get these soldered up. And just double check these. Yep, all those look very, very good. So I don't know if you can see these in focus. Hopefully you can. But those look very, very nice. All very good. So let me finish up this side here. By the way, I will put I'll put links in the description to the tools that I use. Most of the items came from Amazon, and even I think the ones that didn't, you can buy at Amazon. So I'm just using, this is just standard, I have to look at the contents, but it's just standard solder. Nothing special about it, really. This is a Weller soldering iron with the adjustable temperature, and I really like it. It's been very good. At the bottom. Now these pins on the bottom, as you can see, they don't really stick out that far compared to everything else. And this is going to be, number one, it's going to be elevated, but it's going on a wooden base. So the wood certainly could conduct, depending on the characteristics of the finish that's in it. But for these pins, I'm not going to worry about snipping these off just because they don't protrude that far. So we'll get these soldered up. And I'm actually, oh, and so this was, you can see this is the solder that I'm using here, as well as the part. Now this, I know this solder actually originally, this came from Fry's Electronics when they were still open. Unfortunately though, they're gone, and unfortunately so is Radio Shack. Pictures on it. I just didn't really use it that much, but I do still have my license. Okay, good. Looks good, nice and level. Everything is good. And you can see what I always find interesting, of course, is, you know, you got, this is plastic here, but no melting at all. Everything is nice and solid, not going anywhere. It's on there correctly. We're good to go. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is we do have a couple more pieces that we're going to be putting on here, but also too, one of the things that we're going to be doing is there is the board that holds the Nixie tubes as a daughter board. It can only go on one way, so you can see there's a long and a short, so only fits one way. But basically, this is going to mount on top here. And in order to do that, what we have is we've got a riser, which we're going to mount on each side, and then this part will go on the upper board. And I suppose you could actually do it either way, but do this. And the way that we do this is we take this, and this one is, what is this, 3, 6, 7 pins. So just to confirm it, so we'll put this here, and we basically snip it. Just like that. And just a little bit of cleanup on it. And you basically, you do lose, you end up losing one pin, but that's okay. So that's gonna go right there, just like that. And we'll do the same thing on the other side.
And so there's that one. So I get this coming up just a little more. Okay, got that, and this one. So you can see
how it leaves that one, and the pin, I'm sure, flew off somewhere.
clean that up a bit. And we have this one. There's this one here. And it's going to, make sure I get this right here. There we go. That's good. A little bit of cleanup. Oh, there's that pin that went flying out. So we'll get these on here. And these we do want
Perpendicular, so these may be a little bit tricky to get on here. I'm gonna have to pull some more solder out. But what we can do is we can actually lay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this perpendicular, and then I'm basically just going to touch this in there just like that. And you can see now that's held it on there enough. Now I can do this way.
And to the very, very last knob here, I'm going to add a little bit more on this one. There we go, a little hot.
So I'll have to pull out some more solder. We'll get the rest of those up. We'll get the other side on. But again, nice and perpendicular there. Okay. All right, I'll be back shortly. Hey guys, I wanted to do a bit of a check-in here. So give you an update on the board and what we've got done. So I've got pretty much everything mounted on this board except for the power input. I've got to wire this up. The power input will go over here, and it'll use a wire that'll go to it. and the wire will get soldered here, and the other end goes on to our connector here. So got to do that. And then the other thing that we have is we have 3 of these push buttons, and these are just 2-pin buttons. So these would be normally open, and then when you push it, it closes the switch. Those get wired up over here. And again, even though there's 4 contacts here, instead of these being push buttons on here, this particular kit uses wire as well, and that's because of just kind of where they sit. They need to sit further away from the board, just slightly. So those will get wired up, and in the instruction video, I'll have to look at it again, but I believe he did these 2 corners on each one of these. And so I've got to do those, but I got the headers are installed. I got all those soldered in. Everything on this board is soldered in. I did have to use my spare, I think this is the inductor. The original one, I'll show it to you, is you have to be very, very careful. Here it is. So this is what's inside of the kind of rubber wrapping, but you have to be very careful here. And this pin right here, you can see it's just flopping around. I think I can actually fix it and then just put some wrapping and tape back over this. But unfortunately, that one just kind of popped right there. So I'll fix that. I'll maybe put a little bit of glue right here and then resolder this connection. So I'll do that, and that way I've still got my spare here. But the kit does include a spare. So just kind of be careful. You see how this does have to be bent because it does need to lay down flat because of our space constraints, and that's where it gets wired in. So that board is done. What I'm working on right now is the daughter board, which is where the Nixie tubes go in. So I've got the first one just kind of sitting in here right now. This is a little tough. The pins on these Nixies, they've all been kind of cut off, and they're not typically straight. In fact, you can actually see like this one right here. So what I'm actually doing is taking my tweezers and just kind of going around straightening these out to make them a bit easier to insert. I don't want to cut them off yet, just in case I have any kind of issue, but I'll go through and do that. And then on the back, the cathode is several things here. There's the white insulation here. That's my cathode pin. That's going into the marked position right here. So that's the back of the board. And additionally, if you look, I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up, but there is a little arrow right there. That arrow points to the cathode. So this one right there, again, you can see that's my cathode line. And these are IN 14 model Nixies. But basically what you have to do is just kind of get those in. And what I've found is on the daughter board is to go ahead and put your connection points on, which I've done on both sides. Do that first, and then that way this will sit up a little bit. And then basically what I do is just kind of go at an angle and then progressively rotate myself around using the tweezers to help get the pins into the hole down here. So just a little tip there for, especially if you're having trouble getting these in. And then once I've got it in, I've just bent 2 of the pins over. I'll get these soldered up. In the instructional video that's provided, he actually soldered on the LED first, and the LED, the way this works is the LED is going to actually sit underneath it. It's kind of an uplight or a bottom light there, and then these go over into the connection point over here. Because of these pins and needing to kind of go over this, just the way that he's got it wired up, I'm going to get this done first. This way I can get these cleaned up, snipped off, and then I'll put some insulation on these before I do my install. So that's what I'm doing on this. I'm going to get the Nixies done first. I'll get the LEDs done. I also have, this is actually a neon tube here. This neon tube goes in the middle here, so it's kind of like your decimal in the middle of a clock. That's going to go into that there, and then this daughter board will be done. I'll be able to put that together, and we'll put it in the case. So that's where we are. Got to get these done. This should not take too long, and I'll check back in with you once I've got these snapped in. Hey guys, I didn't record the audio when I was actually doing the work here. What I'm doing is I'm putting some shrink wrap onto the LEDs that go underneath the Nixie tubes before I solder them in, because as you can see, the LED legs actually have the ability to touch the legs of the Nixie tube. So you do want to be very careful here when you put these in. I ended up actually removing the LEDs. I originally thought that I had a problem with the board or something like that, and I didn't realize that I had actually turned off the LEDs using the push buttons on the front. One of them has the ability to adjust the brightness and turn them off, and I inadvertently turned them off, and I never opened the case back up to resolder them back on. It's actually not a big deal. I don't really care for the LEDs that are on there. I think it looks fine without them. But anyway, I'll just kind of speed up the video here in just a moment, and you'll get an idea of what everything looks like as it finishes up. So here's the finished daughter board, and you can see all the Nixie tubes are on. It's ready to be mounted, and I've actually already wired up the rear power as well as the front switches. I just followed the instructions in the guide video, which is linked below this one. Basically, all the switches do, it's just an interrupter. I believe it's a ground interrupter that that triggers the board to reset a particular setting or alter a setting. And then the daughter board, as you can see here, just basically just snaps right in. And once it's snapped in, the tubes are ready to go. And you can actually power it up the way it is now. Everything else has been soldered onto the boards. And in fact, I can't remember if I saw it. I actually turn it on in just a moment here, but I definitely will show it at the end of the video with it powered on. Also, you note too, right there, that small daughter board that's right below where my tweezers are right now, that actually is a battery, and it also, I'm not sure what the circuit on it does, but the battery is a backup battery for the clock. So in this step here, I'm working on getting the switches into the case, and the switches, you can see them actually up at the top of the screen right next to my solder. There's three little basically nuts that go on to the end of these. So these will pop through the front of the board. We'll put on the three nuts, and then that will be what holds them in position, and then you'll be able to push them from the front without them pushing through the board. And you can also see here I'm plugging in the 5-volt power supply, and we'll get everything lit up here. In fact, there it goes right there. So let's take a look at what we can see. And you can actually see here what it looks like. Everything is powered on. Now you do want to be careful because these Nixie tubes do actually operate using high voltage. And the upper part of the daughter board in particular is high voltage. It's not like the 5 volts. I don't remember how many it is, but the voltage itself is actually quite high. You definitely do not want to disassemble the daughter board. You can actually basically destroy the entire thing by doing that. So do be very, very careful when you do have the board open like this. Basically what I'm doing is just validating that everything is working before I finish things up and go to mount the board into the case. But everything did prove out fine. Everything's working well, and I'm very, very pleased with the result. All right, guys, I've got everything soldered up, and I'm just in the process of putting this together. There is a separate video which I'll link to the assembly instructions, but you start from here, and actually looks like this goes down just a little bit more. But basically what you have to do is kind of rotate this around, and it's a little tricky to get everything lined up. In fact, it's a little bit easier if you bend that out. There we go. Get that one side in. See if I can get this one. There we go. Getting there.
Let's see. Let's push up a bit more.
Probably have to take a little bit of glue, just dab that on those, just to hold them in there. But looks like that got everything in place. And let's see, we'll plug it in just to be sure it's still all working.
Yep, still looking good. So pull this out again, and
what I'll do is take these, and the instructions actually show these going in the other way around, where you have the screws on the top. I'm going to do it where the screw head is on the bottom. I think it'd be more attractive.
get the line up there.
I can see it in there. It's like straight in. There we go. Get a screwdriver.
And these don't have to be tight.
Okay. That in. There we go. And what it says to do comes with just some really tiny little nails there, is to basically, you can just go through. Well, I'll have to get a small hammer, but there you go. That plugged in, and I will say, so it does have the backup battery in there, and which is great, because when I first showed you the video, it's actually been several days. So that backup battery held the time, and it is completely accurate. That's what time it is here locally, 11:29 a.m. So anyway, but it does have the different options for the way that it changes the numbers. There you go. And then of course you can set the time using these two here. So I'll have to look at the instructions again. In fact, right here. Let's see. So yeah, so you can see the button controls there and what the effects are. But anyway, should be interesting. I look forward to, I'll get these nails put in. But there you go. Overall, I'm very pleased with it. The only kind of real issue I ran into was I did have, there are supposed to be LEDs that are underneath each one. I tried wiring them both ways. I could not get those LEDs to work. I don't know what the deal is there. I'm not real worried about it because I've got the light on the camera turned on, so it's a little bit bright here. But I don't really think that the LEDs on the bottom are really needed. So I'm not even going to worry about that. But no, I'm very, very pleased with this clock. I think it looks beautiful. I love the wood case. And overall, this is a great electronics kit. I would definitely buy this again. So feel free to reach out in the comments with any questions. But thanks for watching.